What's up, guys? Probocast here. Welcome to the channel. So this is a bit of an interesting one because it's the first time in the around 2 months that I've had this channel. I know it seems longer. I've got so many videos up, but I've only really been on YouTube for about 2 months. And this is the first time in that time that one of these juggernaut sort of artists has released something that I get to react to, like early days, you know, like there's already, trust me, there's plenty of reactions to this already. But for me, this is kind of interesting because I get to look at bleeding edge current work, which is, you know, for me, it's a whole new angle to look at it from. So yeah, this one's going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing Meshuggah. The song's called The Abysmal Eye. And yeah, like based on the other Meshuggah song I did was called Bleed. And that had a really good response. A lot of the comments were really interesting on that one. And I learned quite a lot, you know, and there's one thing that I learned in the last one is that these guys are one of those bands that sort of push the limits of technical playing while still having a lot of energy and a lot of heart, you know. So that's going to be real interesting to see how they've evolved. Now, it's been my experience that bands like this, like your, you know, Meshuggah, Dream Theater, Tool, guys that are pretty technical and stuff like that, they often don't get worse. You know, there's a lot of times where bands, they have an amazing record at one point and then they gradually, you know, get less and less interesting. Bands like this that push the limits tend to always break new ground. Not always. Sometimes they have albums that are misses. But it seems to me that the general trajectory for bands like this is upwards. So I'll be really curious to see how this differs from something like Bleed. And we'll look into it and find out. Let's take a quick look into the immutable band that is Meshuggah. Off the bat, wow. All right, we'll stop right there. What's interesting so far is that it's pretty much stuck to the same thing thematically through this whole portion of the song, where it's got you know, that same sort of, I guess it's almost a gallopy rhythm, but you know, the vocals stay really consistent and the rhythm stays very consistent. I like the guitarists are doing this kind of cool thing where as they, you know, they'll when they hang on that last note, they'll just bend it just ever so subtly sharp. And it sort of gives this a little bit, it sort of adds to the bounce in a weird way, like a, you know what I mean? There's always like a little bit of, you know, which I think is just a cool little flourish added by guys who just know what they're doing. You know what I mean? That's kind of the sign of a creative player, is that they push the boundaries of what's normal, you know? But man, yeah, so far so good. I'll jump back a bit because I feel like we're probably going to lead into a transition, and I want to make sure I catch that. Oh, also the other thing too, I really like the consistency in the vocal so far. He's not trying to do a million things. He's just sticking with that rah, 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 that one sort of sound. And it leads me to believe that there's going to be sort of a little bit more variation later on. But who knows? Wow, through that passage there, I completely lost track of the rhythm. I didn't know what was going on. That's really interesting. The second verse there, I noticed the vocalist came in with a completely different groove, and it was kind of a little bit more filthy. You know what I mean? It was like da, 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 you know, like it just he's really sitting in the pocket or even just beyond the pocket a little bit to just sort of you know, to give some variation to what is otherwise a pretty consistent like rhythm bed, you know. Now that I'm trying to figure out what was going on there, because in that rhythmic part sort of towards the end there, the rhythm of the guitars and the bass and everything didn't change, but the drums starts doing these interesting fills which are polyrhythmic, but I kind of lost track of where the pulse was, which is unusual. Like it's not unusual for me to lose where the beat is, but it's an unusual sounding sort of mechanic of what he's doing there that sort of makes me really want to listen more and figure out exactly where that polyrhythm sort of falls into place. It's wow, really wild. So awesome. Okay, I just want to talk about that section there. Although first thing I want to point out is that for whatever reason, all of these you know, metalcore, deathcore bands always seem to find the greatest synth sounds. You know, like it's real easy to open a synth plugin or, you know, turn on a keyboard and find a real run-of-the-mill synth sound that might sound really cool. It might sort of evoke 80s or, you know, video game sound sort of stuff or whatever. But these guys in general, like like the bands I've heard so far, whenever there's any kind of synth work in there, it's always just a really cool sort of granular, dusty sort of synth sound, which is always really, really cool. Now let's talk about that guitar solo portion there. That was really interesting. To my ear, it sounds like he's using a delay with a pretty tight sort of what we call what's the word, feedback control, which is when it determines how many echoes there are. It just reminded me, I don't know whether he's playing just notes or if he's tapping, but it seems like there's maybe a triple sort of echo going on there, that's in time in the beat with what he's playing, I think. Let me double check. It didn't seem to sound like it was harmonizing, but it was just the rhythmic pattern seemed like it was probably an echo. I mean, he could very well just be playing that, like sort of like a have I got any sound? No. No, either way. He could be doing something like a pull off. And then up the top doing like a... Of course, I can't articulate that because I'm not a genius. But like he seems to be doing like a tapping pattern up here. And then doing like more notes down here. So it very well just could be played straight. I'm not 100% sure. Normally I can pick up on things like that pretty clearly, but obviously there's so much going on in this song, it's hard to tell. And just, I mean, being able to consistently tag that rhythm when it's so off kilter, like it's so polyrhythmic against the pulse. It's just next level. It's just next level playing. It's actually not. It's next level hearing. It's being able to fundamentally feel that rhythm and just somehow jump onto the pulse and just play against the pulse. You know, like it's, wow. It's super interesting anyway. I'm going to go back and try and get that from the start. Yeah, there's definitely a delay in there. Yeah, now take a real good listen to that vocal. There's some awesome layering going on there. It just, I mean, it would sound brutal on its own, but you can definitely hear it's been at least triple tracked. You got the center vocal, and I can hear subsequent tracks of it in either ear as well. So there's at least 3, but sometimes, I mean, a lot of times these guys will go super hard and just have a bunch of vocals sort of layered in the background, but at least 3. Yeah, the giveaway is always there's a marginal delay because, you know, as a human, you can perform it 3 times. You're never going to get exactly the same each time. So there's, if you ever want to try and hear layered vocals, then usually listening to the starts and the ends of each note. Having said that, there's tricks, right? So there's a thing you can do in the studio where you can use what's called like a side chain or a ducking gate. And so what you do is you have your main vocal, and you'll basically use that a split of that as the source to open and close a noise gate, which is, I think of it just like a gate that allows noise through, right? Under a certain threshold, it won't let any sound through until it gets open, typically. But you can also control the opening and closing of a gate based on the volume level of a source coming in from a separate track. And so what you'll do is you'll usually sum all of the backing vocals together, and you'll put a noise gate on there and you'll control it from the main vocal. So as soon as the main vocal, a certain volume level's detected, it'll open the gate and let all of the backing vocals through until such time as that original vocal stops making sound, and then it closes the gate. And so any of these backing vocals that sort of hang off at the end will just get sliced off. And it just makes it super tight and punchy. It doesn't sound like that's what's going on here. I think they've just tracked it a bunch of times really clean. Like they've just done a great job with it. But it's just an interesting thing. Doing it with the gate tends to, it hides the fact that it's a multi-layered vocal a little bit better. And it just sort of gives more of the illusion that it's a big, thick single vocal. But yeah, it's just a little studio trick. But in this case, I think they just tracked it multiple times. Nice. I like a song that's bold enough to just end in silence like that. That's really cool. All right, guys. Yeah, I'll be back after this with a summary. Hey guys, this video is made possible by Enchroma. 1 in 6 guys and 1 in 200 women are colorblind, and if that happens to be you, there's something you can do about it. Click the link in the description, it'll take you to Enchroma's website where you can get a free eye test. And while you're there, maybe pick up some corrective lenses. They've got styles to suit everybody and a 60-day money-back guarantee, so you got really nothing to lose. And while you're there, use the code CHAOS in checkout to get 10% off. Tell them Primal Chaos sent you. All right, we're back. So the interesting thing about a song like this as a reaction is it's a little tricky, right? Because there's so much going on and there's so much that requires, I guess it's kind of like practicing listening to it. You've got to do the reps to really get to the bottom of what's going on, because there's a lot going on. Now, I recently did a video of Carnifex. On many levels, there's some similarities, like it's extreme vocals and there's a lot of, polyrhythmic stuff going on and things like that. But to me, Carnifex just sounded like raw chaos, whereas this is controlled chaos. And I think that's the mastery of Meshuggah. That's why they've been around so long. They took something that was like I was expecting there to be heaps more variations and stuff like that throughout this. I was expecting after that sort of pretty consistent first verse, I was thinking, okay, they're going to take it in some weird directions after this. And they didn't. To their credit, they held true to the vibe of the song. And, they definitely did variations and different parts, like, obviously the guitar solo and coming in on that second verse with more of a groove in the vocal and things like that. It was a lot more subtle than I was expecting. And that's really cool, because sometimes I think in the metalcore genre, from what I've heard, a lot of times creativity is sort of replaced with randomness. I think a lot of times, you sort of have to, like I've said, like a few times, it's music for people with ADHD. It never stays on an idea for very long. It always sort of switches it up. Every time there's a new part in the song, a whole different song. And that's cool. And I think there's some bands out there who are the masters of that. And it's more of like shock and awe. It's like, whoa, these guys took it in a whole other direction. But sometimes I think you just need to have a consistent, solid song, And in this case, that feels like exactly what this is. And it shows a little bit more maturity and a little bit more confidence in their sound. So, and that's to be expected based on how long these guys have been around. But man, there's some really interesting polyrhythms in there that they're not flashy, they're not flexy, they're just good, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear with this one, I suppose, when I think back. You know, I didn't want too much chaos. I didn't want too much disorder. I just wanted something that wasn't the status quo, something that was different and unusual and challenging, which is exactly what it is. Those drum fill polyrhythms, I still don't understand. I need to sort of sit with this song for a little bit longer to really get the feel of what the drummer's doing there. And like, I don't want it to sound like I'm being critical, because I'm not. It's me that doesn't understand what he's doing. It's not he's not doing it right, you know. So that's something I've got to work on in subsequent listens, and really sort of get to the bottom of rhythmically what's going on there. Because typically I'm a bit old school with my influences and stuff like that. As you guys probably know, metalcore, deathcore, all that sort of stuff is relatively new to me. I've been familiar with a lot of music that has interesting polyrhythms and stuff like that, like Tool and a lot of power metal and things like that. But typically my tastes used to fall into pretty regular territory. Like, to me, a song that's in 5/4 was kind of relatively interesting, you know? So, you know, taking songs like this where, I mean, a lot of times it's just 4/4, but with really interesting accents and polyrhythms and stuff like that. Sometimes I'm not even sure what the count is with this one, because everybody's doing such, like, complex rhythms against the groove. It's hard to count, at least for me anyway. But man, you know, this was just a masterclass in just doing the right thing. That's exactly the best way to describe it. Do Meshuggah fans, do they connect with this song? I don't know. So I'm gonna have to, I always try to stay away from listening to things or researching the songs before I react, because I want a pure reaction. So I haven't looked into whether or not this song has landed well with the Meshuggah community. So that'd be interesting to find out. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, you know, because there's bands definitely go through periods, and oftentimes I'll do a reaction to a song and people are like, oh man, you should have chosen something from this album or that album. This doesn't really demonstrate who the band is. And whether or not this demonstrates who Meshuggah is entirely up to you guys to tell me, because I really don't know. Did I like it? Yes. Do I think that they're incredibly talented? 100%. I'm also highly interested in hearing more of their stuff. So I also wanted to thank Jay for the suggestion on this one. Jay and Dan have been instrumental in sort of pushing me in some cool directions with this channel. So he was the one who gave me the heads up that this album is out now. So yeah, that's awesome. And thanks again. As always, if I brighten your day, feel free to buy me a coffee. I'll put a link in the description. And also like, share, subscribe. I can't even imagine when I started that I suspected that in 2 months I'd have close to, well over 4,000 subscribers. And, you know, and I understand that that's testament to how much you guys love metal and how much you guys love introducing people to metal, and, you know, seeing that look wash over their faces when they feel what you felt the first time, you know. And that's why reaction channels work, and I'm happy to be a part of that community as well. So I'm starting to feel like I am part of that community because of the support you guys throw at me, and that's amazing. So yeah, but thanks again, guys. Meshuggah was great, and I'll catch you on the next one.